Welcome to this programming tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can use selection statements in Python to create a very basic rock, paper, scissors game. To get started, I need to first get the player 1 and player 2 to enter rock, paper or scissors. To do this, I'm going to write a print command here to output a question. We'll write player 1, please choose. Then I'm going to get the input of a player by using the input command. Remember, when the program sees the input command, it'll stop and ask the person to enter something. By itself, it's kind of useless. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to store input into a variable. Because this is storing player 1's choice, let's write player 1 here and make it equal input. Next, I'm going to copy and paste this and change player 1 to player 2. We should be able to enter both of those into our program now. To do this, we're going to click Run and start debugging. And we can now enter our choices. Player 1 chooses rock, player 2 chooses paper, and the program stops. To play rock, paper, scissors, we need to use an if statement or a selection statement to be able to differentiate between which one player 1 is picking and which one is player 2 picking. To do this, we use what's called if blocks. An if block consists of at least one thing, and that is an if statement. The if statement will have a condition, and then it will have a colon at the end of it. Every time you create a new if block, you must always start with if. This will let us branch out into different options, much like a flowchart. Now to select the condition, we need to see what player 1 has entered. To do this, I'm going to write player 1 equals rock. In this case, I'm checking to see if player 1 is equal to rock. In other words, if the input entered is equal to rock. You'll notice that when I do equal to, it's two equal signs. This is because we are using the one equal sign as a setter to assign this to this. One equal sign sets something, two equal signs checks something. We are checking to see if player 1 is equal to rock. I can then write an AND command to check player 2. I'll do that over here. Here I'm saying if player 1 is equal to rock and player 2 is equal to rock as well, then we're going to call a draw. You can also think of the two equal signs as equals to. Equals to has two words, so it uses two equal signs. When I press enter, you'll notice I have this spacing at the beginning of my line. This is really important in Python because this tells Python that the code I'm about to write only happens if this is true. Let's write an output. We'll write draw. Let's test our program. If I click Run and start debugging, and player 1 chooses rock. Let's try it down here again. And player 1 chooses rock and player 2 chooses rock, we should see that this condition is now true, in which case it's going to print draw. If I hit enter, you can see we get draw. Let's now write another if statement. I could write if, but in this case I only want one of them to be right. You can't get multiple right in rock, paper, scissors. It's either you're winning, you're losing, or you're drawing. So instead of if, I'm going to connect it to this one over here by writing elif. Elif is a short way of saying else if. So in this case, I'm saying if player 1's rock and player 2 is rock, then print draw, else, if, and then I'm going to continue the condition. In this case, let's copy and paste our code. And instead of rock and rock, let's do rock and paper. If this is the case, then player 2 will win because paper beats rock. Let's print that out underneath. Remember the spacing at the beginning. If you don't have that spacing, the program won't work. Let's now do it one more time, and this time I'm going to do scissors, in which case player 1 wins instead. Now, if the player enters any other commands, I want the program to be able to catch that. What if player 1 doesn't enter rock? What if player 1 enters paper? I don't have anything here to check if player 1 is equal to paper, in which case my program won't work properly. I could carry on with elif, or I could use another special command called else instead. Else doesn't have any condition. It catches everything that is not true here. In this case, if it's else, I'm going to print I don't understand. In this way, if none of these conditions are met, the program will print out I don't understand. You can see there's an error here next to the else. That's because I forgot to put a colon. Let's test this program. If player 1 chooses rock, and player 2 chooses rock again, we get a draw. Let's run the program again. If player 1 chooses rock, and player 2 chooses scissors, it outputs player 1 wins, because this condition is not true, this condition is not true, but this condition is true, in which case it goes inside here. If we run it again, and player 1 chooses rock, and player 2 chooses scissors again, but spells something wrong. You see here I've forgotten to put the R here. I don't understand, because none of these conditions are true. You have to remember the spacing as well, because if you see here, it shows you that because of the spacing, everything goes inside it. If I don't put the spacing, this no longer works. And I get an error over here. Always put spacing. For every if block that you create, you must always start with an if. You can have elif, it is not mandatory, and you can have as many as you want, whereas you can only have one if statement per block. So if I wanted to carry on, I could paste this underneath as many times as I wanted to. Else is also not mandatory. You don't have to have it. But if you do have it, you can only have it once, and it has to go at the very, very, very bottom of your if block. The other cool thing about this is I can actually carry on inside. Let's say I want to ask player 2 to enter another choice. I can do that here, take their input again and store it in player 2, and then I can have another if statement inside here. Let's say that they choose paper, and then player 2 wins. It's a bit of a cheat, but it'll show you what I mean by this section over here. If I run this program, and player 1 chooses rock, and player 2 chooses rock, you'll see it says draw, and then it says player 2 enter another choice. If I now enter paper, it says player 2 wins. So you can see, and I'll run it again, if I choose rock, and then I choose paper, I just get player 2 wins. I cannot get to this if statement where player 2 equals paper and player 2 wins unless this statement here is true. That is because that is inside here, and this must be true for me to be able to carry on this way. Now deleting that, what you can do now is you can create a whole bunch more elif statements to check all the other possible combinations, 9 in total, so you can have a rock, paper, scissors game that you can play with your friends. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you have found it helpful.